So I'll ask you, what was your first concert and what was your best concert that you attended?
I really don't want to tell you any of this because it's just going to feed into your narrative about me. But my first concert was Bobby Brown, and I don't attend.
Hold on, Bobby Brown, New Edition, or Bobby Brown, the makeup artist?
Why would she?
Because you going to Bobby Brown is not something that I would ever have put in the same sentence. This is John Dunson, and welcome to another episode of I Take Your Point podcast. I am joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Len Sequins, because she is wearing apparently something from the bygone era of disco. How are you doing today, Miss Ben?
I am well, and there's never a bygone era of disco. It's always the 70s in my head. I'm doing really great. And you, sir?
I am always better than I deserve. Thank you for asking. How was your week?
Good. I did some traveling, so I'm back in the great state of Texas, and I've got great news. I was able to do a handstand today. I haven't been able to do one in like a month because I had a terrible massage, but I'm back in business.
No one cares. No one, literally no one cares. But I'm glad that you were able to do a handstand. Hopefully that will bring some oxygen to your head. So maybe that's, again, what are you doing with your hair?
It's Texas, man. I just let Texas do what Texas wants with my hair, and I just go with the flow.
That's not Texas. That's you
It is
putting on
Texas.
your hair and just looking like a wild woman.
Wild, that is a strong adjective. What's on your agenda? Oh, actually, how was your week, sir?
Was well, thanks for asking. I was in the great city of Boston. Obviously, Boston was in the news a little bit this week. One of the things that Boston was in the news for was you had the CEO of Astronomer and the HR chief people officer, I believe, of Astronomer caught up at a Coldplay concert. That was the talk of social media this week. What say you in terms of that event and what happened?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that.
Why am I not surprised?
It's just this Kardashian effect that I call it. That we collectively again have this obsession with people's lives. Like we just need to have the intricate details of what's going on in their life. And I really take issue with the person that posted this. Right, because she doesn't know their life. Anything could be going on. They could have an open marriage. And now you've put this woman in a position where she has to defend herself, defend her family. It impacts her kids. You don't know what's going on. It's not your right. It's not your place to infringe on someone's personal life. She wanted 15 minutes of fame. So she'll be on the circuits and talking about, yes, I just feel so sanctimonious. And I feel like this, I don't have any skeletons in my closet. Stay in your lane, watch Coldplay. Why are you even there at Coldplay? Number one. And two things. Coldplay got some additional attention. Astronomer got some attention because who even knows about either one of those? And I feel that that's a private matter between the families. It's a private matter between the husband, the wife, and her baseball bat. Whatever she wants to do with it. Stay out.
Yeah, I disagree. I'm not going to put the onus on the lady who posted the video because she did not know and she was just.
Okay, why would she do it then? What was the purpose?
Well, obviously she did it because of the
Other
reaction.
than attention.
Yeah, I don't get the reaction of the CEO and the CPO.
But why does she need to do it is my purpose. Which you get a life, lady. Maybe you need to go and have something exciting happening in your life that you need to infringe on someone else. You don't know. You impacted not only these two families, their children, that company, all because you don't have shit to do in your life. And you're like, you know what? I'm about to get me 15 minutes of fame. Back up between those two families. It's not between you.
Yeah, but this lady who posted the video, she did not know any of that.
Exactly. So shut the fuck up and just go on about your life. I'm sorry, I keep cussing. What is happening with me? Oh my God, it's Texas. It's that handstand.
Sequence that you're wearing. No, I mean, I take your point with respect to she does not know what was going on in the families. She does not know whether or not there was an open marriage that existed between Mr. Byron and his wife, nor was it any of her business. Now, that said, the response that Mr. Byron and Miss Cobalt, I believe her name is, and I could be.
Why do we even know their names, number one?
We know their names because of the response that they
why do we need to know their names? We don't need to know anything.
We need to know their names because they are now in the zeitgeist with respect to what it is that's going on with social media and attending these concerts. Now, I do agree with you that in the era of social media, we do have a tendency to try to make everything viral and try to create our moment. We sometimes forget that at the bottom or at the back of all this, there's a family. And
Hmm.
this family, for whatever reason, and for reasons that none of us will understand, are going to ever be impacted. Now, this thing is a meme. So you're
Hmm.
seeing now that at most sporting events, individuals are sort of recreating what they would do if they're caught on the kiss cam. It's called now the Coldplay kiss cam. So individuals are creating games.
It pains me. It pains me for a lot of reasons. It pains me because again, it's an infringement of personal people's personal lives, like just regular people. And it also pains me from the perspective of the wife. Obviously, I don't know. Maybe they do have an arrangement. I have no idea what's going. But now I feel if that was me, I feel like I now have to defend things. I have to defend the way I look. I have to defend my family. I have to defend my decisions. I have to defend everything. Who knows if this had been something that was not viral and they just sorted it out on their own through therapy and, like I said, her baseball bat. I don't know. But now it's become something that's impactful to her family. She has to talk to her kids about it. And I just feel that this Kardashian effect, which I call it again, curating experiences to make yourself important, is impacting real people's lives. And we just don't ever think about the humanity part of it. And I know I'm getting really passionate about it because I do feel for these children. I feel for the wife.
Well, hold on, hold on. Well, and so I want to make certain that we're giving as many facts as we have.
Facts as we know on the internet, which, oh my God, we know that that's so true.
So there was a meme that was going around that had a young lady who was purported to be the wife of Andy Byron and 4 kids. That was not his wife. It's my understanding that his wife, who is an educator of a school in Massachusetts, has two, not necessarily grown kids, but grownish kids. So there are no young kids that are involved.
I still have feelings. And it's also, that's another thing, these internet sleuths. I'm going to go and I'm going to dig. Dig in your own house. What's your husband doing? What's your wife doing? Worry about that.
Well, yeah, I will take your point with respect to we do have a tendency to try to dig in people's lives. And part of that is if we have nothing going on in our lives, or if we have things that are going on in our lives that may not be as interesting as what it is that's going on in someone else's life, we may not want to hold a mirror to them to say, look, my life is not that sucky compared to these guys.
No, it is that sucky. I will go ahead and dig in your life and I'll show you how sucky it is.
Again, Black Karen exists.
And to others as you have done unto yourself.
Because of Mr. Byron's actions, a couple things. One, astronomer has probably the best and worst week of its existence.
Right. I've heard of astronomer. Like
Well,
I will
a lot
tell
of people
you
have.
that I was digging. I was like, what is this astronomer? What is this? No one is like now all of a sudden their search engine, their optimizations like through the roof. Nope. They're like, oh my God, we've got so many hits. No one knew you. Unless you
Well,
were in that space, you didn't know them.
a lot of people know them now. Again, Boston-based company who had some government contracts. Hopefully, they will be able to hang on to those government contracts.
And that's another thing. And I'm not trying to prolong this whole thing, but the response from the company suspending them, unless there was something in a code of conduct that was
He
explicitly
has resigned. He has resigned.
exactly. So if there, unless there was something that was explicit in a code of conduct, that's again, I'm doing my job. What I do on my personal time, as long as I don't have astronomer across my chest and I'm cuddled up with somebody, if I'm not advertising, that's my personal business,
So
right? So
hold on. So he is having apparently an affair with the HR person. And I have both been in companies where there is that sexual harassment video that you have to watch when you're
okay,
talking about sleeping with a subordinate.
right.
So in this particular case, what I hear you saying is, as a CEO of a company, yes, there are things that you agree to when you
Mhm.
sign your contract. And one could say that because she was a subordinate with respect to being the chief people officer, she still did report to him.
Mhm.
So there could have been in some people's minds him taking advantage of her. Now, again, the flip side of that is we're talking about two consenting adults.
So again, what we need to do, and we don't have their employee handbook. I'm saying that if in the employee handbook, they're in the code of conduct, there's explicit language that there are steps they need to do if you're going to have fraternization of that level in the company. And if they follow those steps, or if it's not in there, what right then does the company have to dictate what you do in your personal life? If it was in there and they violate it, it is what it is. But if it wasn't in there, then you can't just say, you know what? I don't like who you're sleeping with. Well, I don't give a what you think who I'm sleeping with.
Literally, you have an issue with you really have an issue with this policy, and that's understandable. I
I
mean,
just
I
have an
get it.
issue with people stepping over boundaries. I have issues with that in terms of anything legal. We talked about, again, we're bringing up the Diddy thing, that I have an issue when you're overstepping.
You
You
just like
can't just apply the law and apply these moral codes at will. You can't, unless it's explicitly written, stay out of people's lives.
I take your point. Our thoughts are with the family members who are impacted who did not attend the Coldplay concert.
I admire them for not attending. Good for you.
For Mr. Byron and individuals like Mr. Byron, if you're going to attend the concert, they have these wonderful things called suites. Invest in a suite so that you're not on the kiss cam.
Just act like, you know what? Just act like nothing's going on. Had he not reacted the way he did, no one would care. They wouldn't have known, whatever.
He did act like a little bitch.
Don't do anything. Just, yay, throw your hands up in the air and wave them like you just don't care. Who cares? And we're all dancing here. I love Coldplay, whatever they sing. I love it.
Speaking of Coldplay, you have to love Chris Martin and the way that he is milking this, or the way that he outed them with respect to his comments.
Didn't know.
Ouch! Why would he know?
Weren't there allegations with him? Like he probably recognized the signs.
Shots fired.
I'm just saying, again, do unto others.
Okay, all right. So you're saying that Chris Martin is an alleged
Allegedly.
guy. So he was married to the coochie
Gwyneth.
candle lady.
Yes, Gwyneth, right. And her,
Yeah. I don't get, why would you make a,
I don't know. That's for another.
well, maybe that's why they got divorced.
Ugh. Yeah, moving on.
So speaking of Coldplay, one of the things that came up in my meeting this week at the company that I work for was we're at dinner and an interesting question came up. It was, what's your first concert and best concert? And part of this is stemming from talking about the Coldplay incident at dinner. So I'll ask you, what was your first concert and what was your best concert that you attended?
I mean, I really don't want to tell you any of this because it's just going to feed into your narrative about me. But my first concert was Bobby Brown, and I don't attend.
Hold on, Bobby Brown, New Edition, or Bobby Brown, the makeup artist?
Why would she?
Cause,
But I would totally go to a Bobby Brown, the makeup artist.
because you going to Bobby Brown is not something that I would ever have put in the same sentence.
That was my very first one. My mom took me. Candy Girl. Yes, I went to that one. That was my very first concert.
Well, first of all, that's New Edition.
But whatever. Don't be cruel.
So clearly, you don't know the difference between a Bobby Brown concert and a New Edition concert. There are differences now.
John, don't be cruel. Okay, so yes, that was my first one. And then I don't want to hear anything out of your mouth after I say this, but my best one was here in Texas. It was in Dripping Springs, and it was Mr. Willie Nelson. It was an amazing concert. He just did a really great concert. It was outside. We were close. Shut up, John. It was good. He's just really engaged with the audience.
That's so on brand for you. The fact that your best concert.
And it was all fun, and we were just. I've been to ACL. That's been
doing with
fun.
your hair?
You just make me hot. So we've been to ACL, so there's always that too. So can we move on? The Austin City Limits. So it used to be a 1 week event, and all of these musicians would come in. It was like $35, 2 days of just all of these different stages of musicians coming in. You could just walk around. It was super cool. But then Austin became Plano, Texas, just so greedy. And now it's 2 weekends. It is a monstrosity. And I haven't been there in years, but a lot of well-known artists will come, and it's just 2 weekends of just music, all kinds of music.
My first concert that I remember attending was Luther Vandross and Anita Baker, and this would have been in 89, 90. And it was such an event. Luther gave great concerts. The best concert that I attended, and again, I was shocked that this would be one of the best that I attended, would be a would be a Elton John concert.
Look at you.
Well, part of it's because Elton
Welcome to
John
the
is a
club. Welcome. Come over here. You're always welcome.
Elton John is a great storyteller,
Mm.
and it was a great concert. I truly enjoyed it. Also enjoyed a Tony Braxton's concert,
Hmm.
and this is going to tie back to Boston. This would have been in 97, 98, and she had Mint Condition. Do you know who Mint Condition is?
Again, what is up with these quizzes? It's just like random pop quiz.
It's
You
not a
were a
random pop
teacher
quiz.
in the past. You're not a teacher now. So just
Okay.
move on with your story. You don't need to have my input. It was a great story.
So
Just
if
you
I'm
don't need to pause.
so if I'm saying she had Mint Condition backing her,
Great.
and I'm
Awesome. I love
asking
that
you,
for her.
with Mint Condition, you don't
Yes.
know.
Why do we need to know that? I mean, I don't understand what the purpose of this conversation is. Could you please continue again? Focus.
So that tying that back onto Boston, that was probably one of the best things that I did when I lived in Boston was attend the Tony Braxton Back by Mint Condition concert. Speaking of Boston, again, because it's one of those cities that I have a hate relationship with, it's a great city to visit, a terrible city to live in. And even though I'm a Southerner and have lived the majority of my life in the South or the Southeast, one of the things that I'm always struck by is the racism that exists in Boston and the racism that is tied to individuals who you would think would be cultured or individuals who you think would be evolved. It's one of those cities every time I visit, my back gets a little up and I was trying to figure out why that is. And I think one of the things that struck me was, and I said this to someone, that when I moved to Boston, I moved there from DC. DC at that time was called Chocolate City. And it was, in a lot of ways, mecca for diversity and especially for Black folk because you had Black folk in power. And I was on college or in college at the time or in grad school at the time and moved to Boston. And it was complete opposite for me because whereas DC was predominantly African American, Boston was not. And if you were a member of what I call the three I's, Boston was your heaven. I mean, if you were Irish, Italian, or Israelite, Boston was the thing for it was the shit for you. And so when I visit, I'm always struck by the city and the changes in the city and what it is that I learned by living in the city. And as I was walking across the city during my stay there this week and visiting the campus of Northeastern where I went to grad school, it struck me that the thing that didn't mesh well with me in Boston was it's a cold city, not from the standpoint of soul.
Okay. Tell me more.
So it has culture. There's a lot of culture because of just the nature of the universities and the different ethnicities that are there, but it lacks that soul. It lacks
Mm.
that warmth that
Mm.
I believe allows me to feel comfortable. And that's what I took away from my recent step back in Boston because great restaurants, great downtown area, which is where I was living while I was there. I lived in three cities while I was in Boston. I lived in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Brookline. Brookline, well-to-do area, right on one of the main strips in Boston. Even the house that I lived in or rented at that time was warmed by this like radiator heat. So it wasn't central heating and air. It was more of, heating coming from the radiator. So it was old. So things like that in terms of warmth. That's what I equate to Boston.
A temperature.
It's not just the temperature, it's the people.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's when I say the warmth of lacking soul. It's hard to explain, and I'm probably not doing a great job in terms of trying to explain it. But I say it again. It is the most racist city I've ever lived in,
Okay.
and again, living in the South for as long as I have,
Mm.
it's the one city that I just cannot find comfort in.
Do you go ahead?
Okay? No,
I was gonna say, do you sometimes feel because you are in the South, and this is one thing that is just challenging for me going any place in the South is just the people wanting to engage. And so I'm not used to people just, hi, how you doing? I'm like, whoa, stay over there. Why do you need to engage with me? And I know that you and I have been in spaces before, and you are constantly talking to people. And I'm like, what is this? Why are we engaging with people? So, do you feel that because people aren't as familiar and wanting to be part of your personal life, that you're finding that is like the racism? Or do you, because I didn't feel that. And I lived in Massachusetts when I was young, but for a year. And I just feel that for me, I'm not the type of person that needs to engage with somebody in the elevator or on the street. Hey, which conference you going to? Hey, what'd you get that? What's your dog's name? I don't give a shit. Like this, I don't need to talk to you.
No, I don't think it's that. And I'm not surprised that you are that you
Again, I don't need anybody else's story to be interesting. Like, I just don't need to engage with you like that.
no, I don't know. I look, Boston, look, to be fair, and I was thinking about this during my trip there. I was thinking, okay, of the places that I've been, and I think about the people that I formed relationships with
Hmm.
outside of one fraternity brother who I pledged. I can't think of another lasting relationship from my 2 years in Boston. I can't point to one thing that said, okay, this is a relationship that ties me to Boston. I don't have that connection to the city. The thing that I do love about Boston, and I will down this hill, Dunkin' Donuts coffee, because Dunkin' Donuts has,
It's so surprising to
yeah,
me.
yeah, I
But
will down the hill that
that's a relationship, a donut.
not
I'm
a,
with that.
not a donut, coffee. Dunkin' Donuts coffee. There's a difference. Dunkin' Donuts donuts are trash. Dunkin' Donuts coffee is some of the best inexpensive coffee that one can buy. Now, that said, I think that yes, Southerners, we are a very relationship oriented people, meaning that we are individuals that necessarily don't necessarily need to get in your business, but we like to strike a conversation, and that conversation allows us to get to know you.
And I wonder, that's why I'm challenging you. I just want you to reflect and just think about, could that possibly, the word that you're using, racism, could it be something else? And I'm going to ask you, have you traveled much in Europe? Because like I've been to Paris, I've been to London, I've been all over the place. And I found like in Paris, they just don't talk to you. They're just like, whatever.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and I've traveled, not extensively, but I've traveled. I will say that with Boston, it was more of the attitude. It's the only place I've ever had a gun pulled on me.
Really, I find that extremely surprising. I just feel like that would be part of your experience on the daily.
Wow.
I mean, it's just the way you challenge people. I just would think that that would happen. Like
No,
that your
it's
ex-girlfriend that,
no, it's one of the only places. It's one of the only places where they didn't have to say it, but I felt the N word.
that's interesting. It's also because there's this progressive liberal narrative that permeates throughout the city. And if you're feeling that, like there's this, and then what I'm hearing you say, there's an undercurrent of uncomfortableness, maybe racism that you're defining as racism.
No, I'm not defining it as racism. Boston, if you look at the history of Boston, and a
Mhm,
lot of Black folk that either have lived in Boston or visited Boston, I mean, the stories are well told
mhm.
with former athletes. Even the great Bill Russell talked about the racism that exists in the city. And I believe the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald, I can't remember which one, did a 7 part or five part or 7 part
Okay.
series a couple years ago talking about the racism that exists. And I think part of it is because Boston is so segregated. It's the most segregated city I've ever lived in. And it has
Okay.
different pockets, whether you live in South Boston, whether
Mhm.
you live in Roxbury, which is predominantly African American. I will say this. I was surprised at the large African or Eritrean population that
Mm,
existed in Boston. And
interesting.
I want to revisit something I said in terms of relationships. I did form great relationships with the Eritrean community when I was in the city of Boston.
What was her name?
Shady. You're shady. You're shady, man. So Boston in and of itself is a great city to visit. It's a terrible city, in my opinion, to live.
Okay.
And again, I wish the individuals who live there Godspeed and
Mhm,
best results. And Mr. Byron, excuse me, who is obviously now navigating the things that he has found himself in by being the
mhm.
CEO, former CEO of a Boston tech company. Here's to making certain that you understand that people in Boston are shady, man. So you got to watch.
People in the world are shady. We're all shady.
I don't know about that. The guy had a work crush, and you've had many work crushes.
Well, you know what? Actually, I married my work crush. Okay, I was gonna say something, but you know what? I did do that.
Really? Okay.
I did.
You tell me more. So you stalked him?
I did not. I moved here from Texas. I needed a tennis partner. He played tennis, and then next thing you know, I had 2 kids.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens between tennis and two kids. So apparently there were some balls being hit.
Moving on.
So speaking of work crushes, have you ever been in the situation with a work crush where someone has made advances at you and you're like, okay, no, not, we're not going to do this. And let's say that that person was Mr. Byron and he was in a position of authority over you. Have you ever been in that situation?
So, my generation, we are pretty good at navigating uncomfortable situations. And I can remember being younger, and I've worked in predominantly male environments. So, being in tech companies, I remember being one of 2 women full of men. And so it's usually for me, which I do not recommend because I love Gen Z right now. They are amazing of having agency and independence and saying absolutely not. One of the things that was effective for me was leaning into innocence, like, I don't know what you're talking about, and then pivoting away. I think that sometimes people will test the waters to see how you respond to things. I remember there was one incident. I was in a conference room, and it was just all engineers and me, and it was cold in there. And they said, "Lynn, is it cold?" And it was because my shirt was tighter and it was cold in there. And I said to them, "Don't you ever say that to me again. Don't you ever talk to me like that. Don't you ever disrespect me like that." So I think that sometimes it's the voices, and we talked about this before. Sometimes people that have a voice and they're stronger, we have to stand up, and we have to be in those spaces for women that find themselves in uncomfortable situations. But I've always been very effective at getting myself out of situations. I don't partake in after hour. If we go out to sales meetings or whatever, I don't drink. I don't do any of those things. I try and put myself in positions where I have to make or navigate through uncomfortable experiences. And I'm not, please take this, I am not blaming anyone if they find themselves in those situations, because sometimes you don't even realize you got into those situations. And then you have to make split-second decisions. Okay, how am I going to get out of this? But yes, I am always aware, and I always lean into, I don't know what you're talking about. I move on. I always use humor, and then I deflect away and I get myself out of it. You like my pretty brown eyes? It was meant it. It was a callback. Don't look at me like that.
Not paying attention to your crazy and just mind boggled by your ignorance of some things with the culture. Speaking of ignorance with the culture, there was some incidents that happened. I shouldn't say incidents. There were some comments this week that happened with respect to the squad on social media this episode
Mm,
about your meanness and how your slick mouth was
mm,
causing some of the guys to want to sort of keep you in the kitchen and possibly barefoot and pregnant. So what
mm.
say you about some of the comments that you were received that were directed at you about your bad attitude, man?
I don't. It's going to be the exact same thing as I always say, which apparently I'll keep saying. So we can just go ahead and play it on repeat. I don't care. I mean, that is your opinion. I am who I am. I will take, and I always do this, I always take some feedback and I say, okay, how did that come across? And obviously, people don't know me. They don't know my brand. They don't know my sense of humor, that I think I'm funny, maybe, and other people do not think that I'm funny, and they don't receive it that way. But I am who I am. I'm like Popeye. Is that Popeye? Any rate, moving on. No, I can take in the information, I can reflect on it and say, okay, let me be a little bit softer until we establish this Southern relationship. But
So I'm sorry.
my,
This what?
just like this engagement that apparently you people like I just don't,
You people, what are you people?
you Southerners. I said, so I'm going to say that again, and this is my last time saying that. John, don't ask me again. That I'm going to say that my relationship with this man, Johnny, I have a lot of respect and admiration for him, but I do not bow down to anyone, especially the Southerner. I'm not doing it. I don't care what kind of Howard University hat he has on. I don't care what kind of signs he's flashing. I don't care. We have a mutual respect with each other. Sometimes my brand is not everybody else's cup of tea, but I come to you with open arms. So now I come to you. Okay, that's a Journey. Do you know a Journey song? Do you know another Journey song, John? Can you name another one? Exactly. So stop with the quizzes and move on. Or was that Journey?
So the shit show is suing the Wall Street Journal. And he's suing them because of what he considers to be liable that they spoke about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And he's not only the Wall Street Journal, but he's suing Rupert Murdoch for $10 billion. That's 10 with a B.
He needs it.
So I find myself fascinated by this guy who clearly had some type of relationship with Epstein that was non-traditional. And by that meaning probably involved underage girls. He had a relationship that was obviously comfortable enough that he hung out with Epstein on several occasions and presented Epstein with some gifts that celebrated who Epstein was. And so I find it interesting that over the last week or so, a couple of things happened with the Epstein thing. One, you had individuals who were big MAGA supporters up in arms about the fact that you had this administration who, for the last couple of years, were talking about when they got into office, what they were going to do, and they were going to release the Epstein documents and the Epstein files. The expectations were that there were going to be prominent Democrats that were going to be listed in the Epstein files that were released. And that was going to allow them to go, okay, we see why Bill Clinton or we see why someone else was not wanting these Epstein files to be released. What ends up happening is they get in there, the individuals who had been some of the biggest, loudest critics of releasing the files or advocates for releasing the files, they get placed in the office to be able to release the files. And all of a sudden, what files?
Because you shouldn't throw stones when you live in a glass house.
What does that have to do with?
I don't know. I just felt like saying that, but I'm going to tie it up in just a minute. That you're now here and you're with this person that was like, he's involved in this. And so now they're throwing stones, but they're like, oh no, we don't want them to throw stones at this glass house. That's how it was, John. It literally made sense.
Okay. All right. So what you're saying, let me try to explain, make your case better than you are. What are you doing?
Sequence.
Lord help her. She needs help. She needs Jesus. So what I hear you saying is that when they were on the outside, it was, if it was Democrats involved with Epstein, it was bad. We get in, we get to look at some of these documents and we see that the individual who we are pledging our allegiance to is more tied into this thing than we're comfortable with. And there may be some 14, 15-year-olds that were involved. And so now we can't really release these because if we do, then we got to, not only redact everything, but we then need to be brought before Congress to answer certain questions about what we knew, what we know, and what we saw. And so you have these individuals going, not only are we not going to release the files, we don't even know that these files exist.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. What are you talking? John, can I pause and just point out the irony from how we started this off with this personal relationship of just non-public figures and how they've become a meme and how have dominated social media. But this is a public figure that could have allegedly create a crime, right? But we're still going on about Coldplay and these personal life. This is what should be forefront.
It should be.
With everybody.
It should be, but America has bipolar disorder.
Oh, that's very strong.
and a very short attention span. So what you have here is you have an administration. There were a couple of things that they did this week that, for me, underscored how serious this Epstein thing may be. And they were quick to point out that the shit show has a medical condition, and they released that information.
What does that have to do with the price of tea again in Jamaica?
Because he is the healthiest president that's ever served. There's nothing that's wrong with him.
That means you can go ahead and commit crimes now? Help me to understand the throughput of this.
I'm saying that they're saying that if what it is that's in these files is so egregious that they would even come out and say the shit show has some type of health issue, because we'd rather talk about that than talk about Epstein, then that to me points a flag to say there's something here that they don't want us to know. Because otherwise, this president who has had countless physicals, and all these physicals point to him being 6'2", 210 pounds of chiseled muscle, when you can look at him and see that he has, a serious obesity problem. probably high blood pressure. He obviously has a couple of other issues that's impacting his ability to walk because of, you can look at the video and see that he has either drop leg syndrome or something that's allowing him to have some type of a limp. So they've come out and admitted some things with respect to his health. At the same time, this Epstein thing was starting to take off with his core supporters. So that makes me believe, and I'm not an individual who believes in conspiracy theories. What that makes me believe is that whatever's there in the Epstein files are probably more damaging than they're willing to admit. Now, it will be interesting to see what Ms. Bondi releases and how it is that is received by his supporters.
If Bernstein and Woodard, like, we need another Watergate. Let's get in there and get those files.
I don't think anything.
Parents, get on that. That's something you can do.
Yeah, I don't think anything is going to come of it. I think that I was listening to Chuck Todd's podcast. Really, really like his
I
podcast.
love Chuck Todd. He's my favorite.
Yeah, he had this podcast, and they were talking about life after the shit show for the Republican Party. What does that look like? Is anyone going to be able to keep together his coalition of individuals that he has been able to amass to allow him to retain power? And he talked about the culture of, and the reason I was listening to him was because he had two individuals that were from Boston radio on it. So this week was all Boston for me. And one of the things that was interesting was they were talking about, you think about the Republican Party and where the Republican Party is right now and the shit show, and how because of social media and what you said, because of the short attention span, the current population, he had to come along, not he had, but society sort of caught up with what he was doing. He did not change. He hasn't changed in 50 years. He has always done what he is doing now, but because social media and because of how it is that he positions himself to be less substance and more flash, then it's always about that next viral moment. And that viral moment is what it is that gets individuals to focus on him and not what he's saying and not what he's doing. And so the theory that Chuck Todd had, was there is no one that's in politics on the Republican side who can be able to capture that. So you'll have the Republicans who are far right, and now you have Democrats who are in the wilderness because there's not a voice for Democrats. And you have this need to have a sane politician to sort of occupy that core center who can speak to moderate Republicans, moderate liberals like myself, who can bring in the individuals to say, okay, guys, they're crazies on both sides, yes, but we don't have to go full far left AOC Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side, or, Heil Hitler in terms of the shit show on the far right side. So some of the things that he talked about, Chuck Todd talked about in this podcast, was his concern is that you have so many on the Democratic side who want them to strike so hard at Republicans that they lose their way.
But say, here's an interesting thing, and I think that you and I talked about this once, and you talked about the social media. I always felt that Trump and Obama were amazing with social media. Like, they both used it to their advantage, obviously different ways, but no one that I can think of, and you go ahead and fill in what you think, has been more effective. And if you think about that, you're saying who can step in? As a culture, we are obsessed with social media and these memes and this, what's the next instant gratification. Obama was very good at that. He left. We have had no one that's been able to effectively use social media and capture America's attention like he did for the Democratic side. This one is so effective with how he uses it. You're saying, what I heard you say is that once he leaves, who's going to fill that up? Those two polar opposites were very effective at using the tools that are available now to impact American culture. And it's either American culture shifts to something else, or we find the next people that are able to utilize those tools that both of them were able to use.
Yeah, I'm pushed back a little bit because I think that if you think about the Republican Party, I'll go back to Nixon and what that team was able to do and how that team was able to use racism help brand what it is that was going on during that moment. And out of the Nixon camp, you had Pat Buchanan and you had Roger Ailes. Roger Ailes obviously went to develop Fox. Pat Buchanan went to develop what we would now call the core MAGA base of the Republican Party. And you had Roger Stone, who is the only one that's still alive from that core Nixon group. And Roger Stone was able to work with the shit show. So
Surprised that he's still alive. Go on. I mean, I'm literally shocked. He's still around.
he's still around. So you
Sorry, go on.
have you have Nixon that leads to Reagan, who was very charismatic, who leads to the shit show. Skipping Bush 41, who I really liked. Bush 43, I like as a person, didn't care for his policies. But you had within Nixon, Reagan, the shit show, charismatic leaders. That's on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, you start with Camelot and the Kennedys. Again, tying it back to Boston, but as I was walking through Logan and saw the Kennedys and the murals of the Kennedys. And now you have his crazy ass nephew who is dismantling Health and Human Services, but that's another story. So you have the Kennedys that lead to LBJ, charismatic leader from the great state of Texas. You have LBJ leading to Clinton with respect to his charisma. I would say that Clinton was probably the last retail politician that Democrats had, meaning that with Clinton, we understood his faults. We understood what it is and who it is that he represented. At the same time, there was a little bit of, say, racism there, but Clinton for black people was labeled the first black POTUS, and we allowed him to get away with some shit that we probably would not have allowed anyone else to get away with.
As usual. Yes.
So Clinton, the interesting thing with the Clinton thing was Clinton led to the progressive wing getting more voice, and that was with Howard Dean. Howard Dean was the first one from a social media standpoint to be able to capture what it is that we're now seeing.
Yes.
Had Howard Dean not happened, Obama would not have happened.
That is very true. I agree with you on that.
Yes, Howard Dean laid the foundation for Obama to happen. Now, I will agree with you that the only one that I see who currently has the charisma, who could probably do some damage on the Democratic Party, is Mandami out of New York, but he's too far liberal or too far progressive for. Again, my politics is more left of center. So in that moderate wing. So from that standpoint, I think the Democratic Party has to find someone, like you said, who can speak to the progressives, who can speak to liberals, who can speak to moderates, and who could speak to those independents and not scare them off.
And stop waiting until the last minute to do something. Do it now.
Yeah, they are in need of a voice. And unfortunately, I don't see anyone right now speaking truth to power.
Why?
No, and that's part of the problem because people will get behind you if they believe that you give a damn and that you're willing to fight for something.
Absolutely. Right. You have to be personal. If you have to be Southern, if you want to move the needle, you can't be a Northern or like me and just like, why are you still talking to me? You have to get involved in their lives.
Well, this is true. So, I mean, from that standpoint, I sell that with the shit show to say he has been an effective communicator with his base. I don't think, and I do agree with Chuck Todd here, I don't think that it will continue over the next year or 2 years. I think that one or two things will happen with this administration. Either there will be some massive scandal.
Again?
Yeah, no, there's some massive scandal that will end it, or there will be there will be such an overreach in terms of some of the policies that it causes individuals to get off social media and get to the ballot and start voting folks out of office.
I think that the interesting thing is hopefully we'll still be doing this because I am so curious when the midterms get here, that'll be the indicator. So I'm not waiting 4 years or whatever. I'm just waiting till midterms. And if we are status quo, then we know exactly where we're at.
I agree. Ms. Lynn, thank you as always for wonderful dialogue. And I hope that that party that you are coming from, that you had to wear the sequins, II is still going on, and you can get back and partake of it. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to accomplishing this week?
That's a good question. My kiddos are back this week, so we might take in a couple of movies before the youngest heads off to school. Trying to spend as much time as possible with them. So I'll be doing that.
Good, good. Oh, you'll be watching. Medea has a new movie.
I've already watched it.
You watched the Tyler Perry movie?
I am shocked. I am literally speechless.
Medea is hilarious. I mean, if you want to just disconnect and be immersed in whatever, her crazy. Yes, I watched it as soon as it came out. I'm a big fan of Medea. Shock and make you speechless constantly. I don't know how this is newsworthy.
This is true. This is true. Guys, thank you for spending this wonderful day with us. Hopefully you learned something from this conversation. We understand that you can be spending your time doing many different things. We're glad you're using some of that time with us. As always, take some time this week to do something nice for yourself. And while you're at it, take some time to do something nice for someone else. Until next time, we'll talk to you.
Thanks for tuning in to another lively conversation on I Take Your Point. This podcast is a production of the SME LLC Media Group. All rights reserved. If you are enjoying the show, hit the subscribe button in the top right corner. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and check out past episodes. Until next time, take care and be well.
The Wizard got them bangers.